For a century, it's been a blacklist intended to keep suspected child molesters out of the Boy Scouts.
Tonight, we reveal the secret documents and the untold stories from Kansas City. 41 Action News investigator Ryan Kath is with us for the findings of his 5-month investigation. Ryan.
Mark, Elizabeth, we had special access to the Boy Scouts' confidential records kept from 1970 to 1991. Tonight, local victims talk for the first time about the consequences of keeping known abuse from police. And you'll hear from a former Scout leader who acted as a gatekeeper to Kansas City's perversion files. At Camp Nash in Bonner Springs, hundreds of memories were created within one of the nation's most trusted youth organizations. But for the father of one former Boy Scout,
he never really got over it, all the things that happened.
The camp is a painful reminder to a secret kept for 3 decades.
He was repeatedly raped over a 3-day period.
This man's son has never talked about the abuse to anyone else, so we're protecting his identity. Back in 1979, the Johnson County dad wrote this letter to the Boy Scouts, saying his 9-year-old son had just gathered the courage to describe to him his horrific experience at the camp.
What's that moment like as a parent?
It was awful. It was gut-wrenching.
The son could only give a rough description of the Scout leader. The father wanted the man's name so he could press charges.
You're hearing all this as a dad. I can only imagine what you're thinking.
I was very, very angry, and I really wanted to do something about it immediately.
A Boy Scouts internal memo warned of possible trouble, but the file doesn't provide an answer to what happened next. For 5 months, the 41 Action News investigators reviewed stacks of the Boy Scouts' ineligible volunteer files, confidential records kept on scouting leaders suspected or convicted of child sex abuse. In many cases, the Boy Scouts learned about the allegations the same way as the public, through the spotlight of a newspaper headline or criminal trial. But our investigation found other local incidents where the Boy Scouts heard specific accusations or even confessions and never reported the abuse to police. We tried to find out how those stories ended, so we wrote dozens of letters to alleged victims, asking if they'd be willing to share their story. Our communication revealed people still coping with unresolved abuse and searching for a sense of closure. This 1973 file about a Scout leader in Liberty had several handwritten letters from parents. There's also a disturbing account from a 13-year-old boy who wrote, "I thought if I didn't do what he wanted, he might brutally hit or maybe even kill me." After responding to our letter, we spoke to one of the alleged victims who now lives in Pennsylvania. He had no idea the file existed. Is there any doubt in your mind that he continued abusing children?
No. I'm convinced that he probably didn't start with us, and I'm sure he didn't end with us.
At the time, nobody reported the Scout leader to police.
They were the adults, so I think I more or less trusted that they knew what they were doing.
The alleged victim told us he'd always assumed it was his word against the Scout leaders. If he'd known about the letters in the file, he said he would have pursued criminal charges when he became an adult. Now, almost 4 decades later, he's learned it's too late for justice.
Basically, our statute of limitation laws are effectively protecting known pedophiles.
The 41 Action News investigators also found accused molesters quietly dismissed from Boy Scouts, but not prevented from working with kids. In 1984, a Scout said he awoke to a leader assaulting him. The boy's handwritten letter punctuated with, "This is a true statement, so help me God." But the Boy Scouts placed the leader on probation. The married man, an employee with the State of Missouri Division of Family Services, thanked the Boy Scouts in a letter for handling the situation in a caring manner, adding, "It would appear no immediate change will be made to my involvement with the Catholic youth programs." Almost all the Kansas City files we reviewed had one thing in common: the signature of local Boy Scout executive Dan Wheatcroft.
Our objective was not to have those kinds of people in the program.
Wheatcroft, now 90 years old, spent 4 decades as a Scout executive around the country, the last 20 years as head of Kansas City's Heart of America Council. When he retired, Wheatcroft received a proclamation from the mayor and a letter from President Reagan for his years of service to the community. But there was a forgettable part of the job that isn't displayed on the walls of his home. Wheatcroft was the reluctant gatekeeper of the Boy Scouts' so-called perversion files in Kansas City.
I think we did things the way that they were being done in those days, and we did them well.
What's your reaction when people say, oh, the Boy Scouts were just trying to sweep it under the rug or keep it hidden?
No.
But this internal Boy Scouts memo from 1972 spelled out how local Scout leaders should handle allegations of sexual abuse. The memo provided a form letter given to men who were asked to sever ties with the organization. It read, "We are making no accusations and will not release this information to anyone, so our action will in no way affect your standing in the community." But the current leader of the Kansas City Boy Scouts tells 41 Action News times have changed.
Zero tolerance, no gray area. If somebody issues a statement, we will remove that leader immediately. They can apply for reinstatement if the facts, are not as perceived, but we don't wait.
Lady Baden-Powell, she was the wife of the founder of the Boy Scouts of America.
As Wheatcroft paged through photos from his career, he recalled difficult conversations about accusations of abuse.
Here's the guy that I reported one of his employees to.
And there was also a photo with a Catholic bishop.
Did you ever have to talk to him?
Mm-hmm. A couple times.
About priests?
Mm-hmm.
In one disturbing case, we found a paper trail that suggests abuse could have been prevented. In 1982, the Scouts kicked Francisco Pecan out of an Independence troop. One Scout and employee wrote, "I can in no way trust him with my children, and I will not trust him with the boys in my pack." Another added, "He seems to have an unhealthy affinity for boys." His arrest and conviction for molesting an 11-year-old boy made headlines that summer. But the date of that crime caught our attention. It happened just weeks after the Boy Scouts dismissed him.
And I think that's where people say, well, if someone had gone to the police earlier, would this never have happened?
Hard to know.
The police report we obtained had a chilling account of abuse in this Independence neighborhood. The detective found a list documenting the names of all the boys Pecan had molested and the ones he wanted to molest. So what happened to that 11-year-old victim in the report who provided the crucial testimony to law enforcement? We found our answer at the Lansing Correctional Facility. This is where Ross Reinitz will sit in a prison cell for the next decade, convicted of burglary and robbery. Kansas prison officials denied a 41 Action News request to interview Reinitz in person, but we wrote several letters and told him about Francisco Pecan's secret file. The news stunned Reinitz, who told us he'd started battling addiction immediately after the abuse in the early 1980s. Tonight, he can only sit in a prison cell and wonder how his life might have been different if he'd never crossed paths with Francisco Pecan.
Two people that would say the Boy Scouts helped cover up sexual abuse. What is your response?
No. You don't seek that kind of publicity, but you don't try to. It isn't a matter of keeping it secret.
But try telling that to this father who never found out the name of his son's accused molester until we showed up at his house with the file 33 years later.
Do you feel like they were trying to protect the image of the Boy Scouts?
Absolutely.
Tonight, he and his son are talking with an attorney, hoping it's not too late to solve a mystery that's haunted them for decades.
I feel grateful that, really, really grateful that you came by, because I think we're going to find the answers I've been looking for all these years.
Mark, it's important to emphasize the Scouts have made a lot of changes to their youth protection efforts. They now conduct background searches on all staff members and volunteers. They provide child abuse prevention training. They have a two-deep leadership rule that requires that not one Scout is ever alone with just one leader. And then finally, they do require mandatory reporting of all suspected child abuse. That was implemented just 2 years ago. The Boy Scouts are now saying they will review all cases and make sure all suspected abuse was reported to law enforcement.
Wow, so much to take in. You worked on this for some 5 months, I believe. I know you had tried to contact as well some of the alleged offenders. What did you find here?
Some of them never got back to us. Others did contact me and say they were falsely accused. The most interesting one, after getting my letter, one former Scout leader did call me on the phone, and he admitted the allegations from 1974 in his file were true. He told me that if he resigned from Scouting, he was told those allegations would never get out.
And did he address the victims that he had allegedly affected?
He said, I asked him if he had a message for his victim, and he said he would tell them he's very, very sorry, and he said he believes God's forgiven him.
Wow. All right, Ryan Kath, our investigator. Thank you. Elizabeth?
Wow. Well, the 41 Action News investigators also found incidents where even parents did not report abuse to police. We showed the files to the president of the Metropolitan Organization to Counter Sexual Assault, or MOXA. She says looking through the prism of 2012 is far different from the reality of the 1970s when mandatory reporting laws started first taking shape. The reporting of sexual abuse has come a long way over the past few decades.
A lot of times it was directed by the parents. The parents didn't want additional light being shed on their family or their child. They wanted to keep it a secret because it was a taboo subject.
Well, our coverage continues on 41 Action News at 10 with the Scripps National Investigative Team taking an in-depth look at the systematic failures within the Boy Scouts that allowed known child molesters to remain as Scout leaders. You can view our Boy Scout series on our website, where we've posted extended interviews, multiple case files, and our full Kansas City investigation. It's all at kshb.com/KC Files.